Thank you very much for the nice introduction. So, first of all, I'd like to thank Edward Calabri and also Mary for inviting me to come here. I'm from Perth. It took 30 plus hours to come here, but this one meeting is very wonderful. I've been enjoying it very much. So this morning, I'm talking about repeated bout effect or preconditioning effect in exercise. So this is me. When I was a student, I was a sprinter, like this. Okay, so originally I'm from Japan. So I asked myself, how should I train my muscles to run faster, especially for 100 meter and 200 meter? At that time, my answer was no pain, no gain. So I had to train very hard to become fast runner. And also, I often got muscle soreness to leg muscles. And why do muscle ache after training? I asked this question to my teacher. He said, common sense, lactic acids. But later on, I found that that is not true. This is Priscilla Clarkson from this university. And then she talked about muscle damage induced by eccentric exercise. So I had the opportunity to come to UMass in 1989 to 91. I studied under Priscilla Clarkson for 2 years. So she was actually champion for the exercise muscle damage studies, and she was a supervisor and mentor for me for a long time. But unfortunately, she passed away 3 years ago. But I'm very happy to be here again, and then I devoted my talk to her this morning. So muscle contractions, there are 3 types. When talking about force and load, force is equal, load is isometric contraction. And if force is greater than load, muscle can shorten, which is called concentric contraction. When force is smaller than load, muscle lengthen during contraction, which is called eccentric contraction. So this is a cycling exercise example. So in this particular exercise, there's a motor inside. Subject has to resist against the rotation. So if the subject tries to push hard, he can stop this rotation, but he has to reduce the force production to do this smooth rotation. So when for this study, we compared between the normal concentric cycling and eccentric cycling for the same intensity for 30 minutes. So when compared to the concentric contractions, concentric cycling, eccentric cycling requires less oxygen, 50% less oxygen to perform the same work. And also heart rate is about 20% lower. And also Brog's scale, which is a perceptive exertion scale, is also 20% lower. So lactate is not produced after eccentric exercise. When repeat the same exercise 2 weeks later, same thing. Oxygen consumption still half. But heart rate is a little bit lower than the first time. And also lactate is much lower. However, this exercise, eccentric exercise, induces some damage to the muscle. For example, after concentric exercise, strength decreases a little bit, but back to normal by 1 day. But after eccentric cycling, strength decreases a little bit more immediately after exercise, and takes about 3 days to back to normal. And also, muscle soreness is developed only after eccentric cycling. However, if we repeat the same eccentric exercise 2 weeks later, strength recovers much faster, and there's no muscle soreness occurs. So prolonged loss of muscle strength and related loss of muscle soreness are peculiar to unaccustomed eccentric exercise, in this case eccentric cycling, which are considered to be the symptoms of muscle damage. So muscle damage indicated by delayed onset muscle soreness, or loss of muscle function, or increase in blood markers, such as creatine kinase and myoglobin. And also sometimes muscle become very stiff and muscle is swollen. So when we do the eccentric and concentric exercise of elbow flexors, large decrease occur to the eccentric, very small decrease of concentric, back to normal very quickly. This prolonged loss of the eccentric, strength loss is peculiar to eccentric contraction. And also range of motion is decreased more for the eccentric than concentric. And also swelling indicator, circumference increase is much greater for the eccentric. There's no increase in creatine kinase and myoglobin after concentric contraction. Also muscle soreness is very limited after concentric contraction. So this phenomenon is very peculiar to eccentric exercise. So muscle damage is, after eccentric exercise is determined by intensity of exercise. Higher the intensity, greater the damage. And if the repetition number is greater, more damage occurs. If fast velocity eccentric exercise induces more damage than slow velocity. Also, muscle length is one of the key factors. If we want to avoid muscle damage, we don't need to do eccentric contraction at long muscle length. We have to limit to the short muscle length eccentric contraction. And also, this is the topic for this presentation. But preconditioning exercise prevent muscle damage. And so if you do the training, no muscle damage occur. And also muscle damage depending on the muscles. Our muscles tend to have more damage than leg muscles. And the children have less damage than the adults. And we didn't see any difference between old and young adults. Also, there are very minor gender differences. So for the next slides, I'm talking about more preconditioning effect. So if you repeat the same exercise 4 weeks apart, this is for elbow flexor eccentric exercise. First exercise, you have a large decrease in strength, very slow recovery. But second exercise, performed 4 weeks later, much faster recovery. Also, range of motion of elbow joint angle recovered much faster. Also, circumference did not increase so much after the second bout. And there's no increase in creatine kinase and myoglobin after the second bout. And the muscle soreness is very limited after the second bout. If we repeat the same exercise 4 times 4 weeks apart, so using the same muscle, most of the adaptation occur after the first bout. For example, first bout is very slow recovery, but from second bout, performed 4 weeks later, already faster recovery. There's not so much difference second and third, but fourth bout, there's less strength loss immediately after exercise. But myoglobin and the CK already have most of the adaptation after the first bout. There's no difference between second, third, and fourth. Muscle soreness is also the same. How long this kind of repeated bout effect lasts after just one bout of exercise? We found that repeated bout effect could last for like 6 months, or sometimes more than 9 months, but not definitely 1 year. So we have about 6-9 months to 1 year, repeated bout effect can be found. If you repeat the same exercise twice, this is maximal exercise twice, you have a more than 90% protection of CK release, which is that the CK does not increase at all after the second bout. But if you perform the low intensity, some maximal eccentric exercise for the first bout, then perform the maximal exercise the second bout, still some protection. So the greater the intensity of the exercise for the first bout, the greater the protective effect. However, it's still like a very low intensity eccentric contractions or isometric contraction at long muscle lengths can still protect some muscle damage. So this is the low intensity eccentric exercise. Just using dumbbell, this is very light dumbbell, only 2 kilograms or so, just lowering the dumbbell from here to here. Then, a couple of days later, they perform maximal eccentric exercise using isokinetic dynamometer. So as you can see here, control group did not perform isometric contractions prior to eccentric, very slow recovery. But subject performed isometric 10% eccentric contraction 2 days before or 1 week before, there's significantly faster recovery. However, 2 weeks before, a little bit less adaptation, little less protective effect. And then 3 weeks before, there's no difference from the control. For muscle soreness, a little bit different. So if you don't perform low intensity eccentric contraction, large soreness occur. But if you perform very low intensity eccentric contraction prior to maximum eccentric contraction, you can reduce muscle damage, muscle soreness this much, either 2 days before or 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. This is also the case for CK activity. So this one is isometric contractions. So isometric contractions performed for the eccentric exercise arm 2 days before this exercise. And then we found that If asymmetric contraction performed at 90 degrees, short muscle length, there's no protective effect. We found protective effect only for the long muscle length isometric contraction. So if you perform 2 maximal isometric contractions prior to maximal eccentric contraction, much faster recovery of strength, much faster recovery of the range of motion, much less soreness, much smaller increase in CK activity. If you perform 10 times, much greater effect. So only 2 or 10 maximal isometric contractions at long muscle lengths can protect muscle damage for some extent. Interestingly, if you perform 2 maximal isometric contractions just before eccentric exercise, no protective effect. So we need to wait for at least 1 day to have such kind of effect. For example, 2 days later, and then significantly faster recovery. 4 days later, still significantly faster recovery. But 1 week, no protection. So there's some window to have this kind of protective effect. But the important thing is, if you perform isometric contraction or low intensity eccentric contraction, just before exercise or warm-up exercise, no effect. We need to wait at least 1 day to have this kind of effect. So this is contralateral repeated butt effect. So previous one using the same arm. But this one, these groups used the right arm first, then waited for 30 minutes, or 6 hours, or 12 hours, 24 hours, 1 week, 4 weeks, or 6 weeks, then using opposite arm for the second bout. So we recruited many subjects, 104 subjects in total, and then each group has 13 subjects, and then we compared between the groups for the change in muscle damage markers. So this is a maximal contraction, voluntary contraction talk. So first bout, all of the groups showed similar changes in the strength. The strength decreased about 40% immediately after exercise. Still, 5 days later, did not back to the normal. Okay? No difference between the groups. After the second bout, using the same arm, significantly faster recovery of strength. This is controlled condition. But even for the group who used the opposite arm, 1 day or 1 week and 4 weeks later, significantly faster recovery compared to the first bout. However, we didn't find this kind of effect when subject performed the exercise on the same day, 30 minutes, 6 hours, or 12 hours, or 8 weeks. So it means that the protective effect does not last for 8 weeks, and also does not occur in the same day. We have to wait for a day. This is also the case for muscle soreness. Muscle soreness is very similar between the groups for the first bout. The second bout, performed by the same arm, much less soreness. But even for the opposite arm, 1 day, 1 week, 4 weeks group, show different, significantly lower soreness than the first bout. But no difference between the bout for the 8 weeks group and 0.5, and 6, and 12-hour groups. So putting them together, control group showed a very high protection rate. For example, the muscle soreness is protected by 90%. But even for the opposite arm, muscle soreness is protected about 60%, 1 week, still 50%, and then 4 weeks, about 30%. Still some protection from arm to arm. But there's no protective effect for 8 weeks, and also same day. So we don't know so much about mechanisms yet, but some neural adaptations, such as shifting the motor unit recruitment, or increased alpha motor neuron excitability, or increased inhibitor feedback could be responsible for this kind of effect, or muscle tendon behavior changes. For example, we found that after the second bout of eccentric exercise, more stretching occurred to the tendon, less stretch occurred to the muscle. So this could be also the possible mechanisms. And also extracellular metrics remodeling, such as initial extracellular metrics adhesion, or delayed extracellular metrics adhesion and collagen expression have found in the animal studies, and also some kind of inflammatory changes. So these could be a kind of combination of these could explain the repeated butt effect. But especially for the contralateral one, maybe more neural adaptations are responsible for that. So this is a kind of homeostasis conference. So modulating exercise induced homeostasis. Yeah, we published this paper a couple of years ago. And this paper, actually, this is just abstract. So homeostasis encompasses the notion that low level of stress stimulate or upgrade existing cellular molecular pathways that improve the capacity of cells and organisms to withstand greater stress. And then this notion underlines much of what we know about how exercise conditions the body and induces long-term adaptations. So during exercise, body is exposed to various forms of stress, including thermal, metabolic, hypoxic, oxidative, and mechanical stress. So these stressors activate biochemical messengers, which in turn activate various signaling pathways that regulate gene expression and adaptive responses. So the question is obviously, is muscle damage necessary for these kind of adaptations? So in this particular study, we recruited 26 healthy elderly men over 60 years of age. So we divided them into two groups. One group performed eccentric exercise with knee extensors. So we started from a very low intensity to avoid muscle damage. And then concentric group started from a little bit higher intensity because we knew that concentric contraction does not induce any damage. So they performed this kind of exercise only once a week for 12 weeks, and then 12 training sessions for both legs are performed. We didn't find any indication of muscle damage, such as muscle soreness and strength loss after any of these exercise sessions. However, after 12 weeks of training, only once a week for 12 weeks, we found that resting heart rate and blood pressure decreased more for the eccentric training group than concentric. And this is the arterial stiffness measurement, decreased more for the eccentric group than concentric. And also circumference, which is the kind of indicator of muscle hypertrophy, increased more for the eccentric than concentric group. And also 1RM strength, this is strength, and also this is also strength, increased more for the eccentric group than concentric. And then chair stand ability, this is the kind of how many times you can stand from the chair in 30 seconds, improved more for the eccentric group than concentric. And this is agility test, 8-foot up and go test, improved more for the eccentric than concentric. And this is the one leg stand test, which is the balance test, improved much, much better for the eccentric than concentric. And interestingly, insulin sensitivity improved only for the eccentric group, not for the concentric group. And triglycerides and total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, decreased more for the eccentric group. And good cholesterol, HDL cholesterol, increased only for the eccentric group. Okay, so we found much better effect for the eccentric exercise than concentric exercise. So putting them together, eccentric exercise could be a homeostasis, and there are negative aspects, which could be muscle damage and delayed onset muscle soreness and prolonged loss of muscle function. But muscle damage can be minimized by using preconditioning exercise, such as lower intensity eccentric contractions or isometric contraction at long muscle lengths, or gradually increase the intensity volume. We can avoid muscle damage. So muscle damage does not appear to be a stressor required for adaptations. So I don't think it is true that no pain, no gain. So there are many positive aspects to eccentric exercise. For example, it's less metabolically demanding. However, muscle function increases more for the eccentric exercise. Muscle mass also increase more. And muscle coordination becomes better. Balance, flexibility, and bone mineral density, insulin sensitivity, better lipid profile, cardiovascular function improve better after eccentric than concentric. And also we found that the brain is also activated more during the eccentric than concentric exercise. For example, we did a study comparing with the descending stair walking versus ascending stair walking. Descending stair walking group showed better improvement of cognitive function for the elderly people. So we need to minimize muscle damage, but maximize the use of eccentric contraction to improve health and fitness. So I like this quote. So this is the Nobel Prize winner in 1950. He said, "Do not fear to be eccentric in opinion, for every opinion now accepted was once eccentric." So maybe this person could be eccentric, but I want to be an eccentric person. So I would say, do not fear to perform eccentric exercises. They could be the best exercise medicine or exercise intervention. So I'm trying to develop an eccentric-only gym. So in this gym, everything is eccentric. For example, if a patient or subject coming to the lab, they have to warm up at downhill walking. And then all of these exercises are eccentric-only exercises. Eccentric cycling machines. Also, this is K-box eccentric training machine. And using dumbbell and barbell, we can do eccentric contractions. So I believe that eccentric contractions, eccentric exercises, can improve patients' health. Like we have been investigating effect of eccentrics on the diabetes patients, also cardiovascular disease patients and stroke patients as well. And also we can improve athletic performance by using eccentric contractions. So summary, muscle damage characterized by prolonged loss of muscle function and delayed onset muscle soreness is induced by unaccustomed eccentric exercise. The magnitude of muscle damage is reduced when the same or similar eccentric exercise is repeated, and even for the contralateral homologous muscle. Low intensity eccentric contraction or a small number of maximal isometric contraction at long muscle lengths also confer preconditioning effects. The underlying mechanisms of the repeated birth effect and preconditioning effect are not fully understood, but eccentric exercise hormesis, using it appropriately, is beneficial for health and quality of life. So thank you very much for your attention. So I would like to have your kind of suggestions for my future research, and you can contact me anytime for this address. Thank you so much.
Any questions for our speaker?
Thank you very much. Right. Right. We don't know them yet. But actually, it means that exercise effect is not metabolic, but maybe more mechanical. So I just try to just maybe show you one of the hypotheses. So eccentric exercise is kind of stretching exercise. So this is actually movement of the muscle. There are a lot of movement of the muscle occur to the connective tissue surrounding muscle fibers. So a lot of kind of arteries and nerves located in the connective tissue. So maybe we can stimulate those kind of tissue better by doing eccentric contraction than concentric. So we are still working on the mechanisms. Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. That's correct. Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, for example, okay, so if you are just performing concentric contractions every day, okay, for example, if we recruit a cyclist for this study, for kind of eccentric damage study, they experience very severe soreness to the muscles. But if you are doing some eccentric contractions in the daily activities, you are doing a lot of downhill walking, you don't have any soreness. So, for example, maybe when we compare between the arm muscles and leg muscles are less susceptible to muscle damage because they are used in daily activities for eccentric contractions, but arm muscles are not. But like wheelchair people, they are using a lot of arm muscles. They don't get sore, after eccentric exercise. So using eccentric exercise, eccentric contraction, maybe muscle gets stronger to protect muscles from eccentric contractions. But if you are just doing a normal resistance exercise, which are not focused so much on the eccentric contraction, you still get sore. You still get sore, and you still get damaged.